introduction. I think a lot of people in the room will know me anyway, doing their audits and leading those teams. But for those who don't, I'm Glen. I'm an associate partner in the not-for-profit team. If you don't know me, you'll probably know Andy or Kev or Hannah. So very much with the group of audit RIs that will be leading the audit engagements this year. My session today, a few things I'm going to talk through. It's really kind of a recap of some of the issues that we saw the ESFA talking about from last year. Andy mentioned the debrief a little bit earlier on. Some of the points they've picked up that they want to see improvements in this year. Also looking at things that we picked up internally. So from the audits that we did last year, we've got quite a list of management letter points, recommendations, and the common issues that we saw. So just going to talk through some of those, just things to be aware of. And hopefully we can get rid of some of those in this year's audit. Then kind of got a getting ready for audit health check. And all of the things in that section, I know a lot of you are doing already, but really just a refresher, just some of the basics really. If we're getting these done right, then it will make sure that you've got the right information ready for us and make that whole audit process go really smooth, really seamless this year. A brief session then on inflow. So those who have been clients for a while, you'll know that we use inflow as part of our data exchange. So really some sort of housekeeping, etiquette points, ways to make that work really well for both of us. And then the final point I'm going to touch on is just what you can expect from Parry. What support is there available for you? What are the touch points? How can we, again, make sure that audit process goes really well? So first of all, Andy touched on a couple of these points earlier. So the ESFA each year, when you submit your accounts, management letter, internal audit reports, they review all of those. And then if there's anything that they're picking up, any common themes, they rather helpfully release a list of those for the next year. So a few of the points that they picked up, and this is specifically on the sort of the year-end accounts, the year-end process. There were still a number of accounts where the submission deadlines were not received on time. They did say this was usually where there's been a change of staff in the trust and the accounting officer leaving, trying to find the appropriate person to actually sign that off and submit was the main reason given. But really how you can prepare for that, just make sure you've got a good timetable in place and where all those board meetings are going to take place, make sure they're agreed with us so we know when we need to finish our work. Just to make sure that deadline's met. The next 2 points, very much as Andy mentioned earlier, making sure that trustees' report does reflect the circumstances for you as a particular trust, and particularly those internal scrutiny statements and the governance statement. There are boilerplate wording that's provided in the Coke Town accounts and model accounts. When we say don't just include it as it is, make sure you've read that, reviewed that, and it is appropriate to you as a trust. They did also then say there's certain statements in the model accounts that you do have to include, which are boilerplate and must be included. So on one hand, don't just copy it, but on the other hand, copy it word for word. But making sure that you've got the right elements within there that need to be in there, but also that it is relevant for you. And again, those who have been clients before, you'll know we reproduce a kind of a trustees report governance sort guide, and within that, we're going to make it very clear which are the things that absolutely have to be in there verbatim. And then those items that this is specific to you, please do make sure these are updated. Another point I mentioned was around the internal scrutiny arrangements being weak. So this was particularly from the view where those internal assurance work that you have done during the year, it needs to be guided by the audit committee, not relying on the person that's providing that scrutiny to decide what they're going to look at. Also, really not you as a sort of a finance team coming up with those areas, it should really be that audit committee that are making those decisions. And then the final point that the ESFA raised was around those sort of higher risk MLPs, so those sort of really risky items, not being actioned in a timely manner. And so really where you've got any higher risk, very much the way we report them, those red ones, and also those amber ones, making sure that you've looked at those from last year, there's a plan in place to put them right, and hopefully we can mark them as a result for this year. So in terms of that was the ESFA and what they saw from the reports that were put in. These are very much from our internal experience from the trust that we worked with from last year. Quite similar themes to what we had from the year before, but again, some of the key ones that were coming up, firstly related parties. So this was sort of two main themes within that. One about where you've got related party transactions, i.e. then getting them notified prior to entering into those and then getting them approved if they're above the relevant thresholds, and then making sure you've got that confirmation that you can provide to us. And then on the other side, Sort of the age-old one around declarations of interest, and are you getting them from all of the trustees, from the governors, from the senior leadership team? And then we're checking them for completeness. So what's publicly available that may not be declared. And again, we're still finding quite a few on there that there are interests that haven't been declared on those forms. So just making sure that they are fully complete. Fixed assets. So a number of points again raised last year. These are getting less and less, which is really pleasing to see, but still the odd case where your fixed asset register doesn't match the trial balance. It's not been kept up to date. It is a must of the handbook that you do keep a fixed asset register and it is updated regularly. But again, something we've raised a few MLPs on last year. Kind of tied into that a little bit, the capital funds. So where you've got any DFC income or SCA or any SIF projects, make sure those capital funds are being recorded correctly, identified. You've got a clear view of what you've spent, what's still to spend, what you're carrying forward. Where there are multiple SIF projects going on for some of our trusts, we found this was an area that took a lot of time, a lot of review. So if you can make sure that you've got a clear understanding of those projects, that will really help the audit. Employment records, this is more an administrative kind of function than anything else. So have you got employment contracts for all of the staff that are signed? We'll ask for them and test a sample during the audit. And then also any pay changes during the year. Have you got those sort of pay letters available that we can see? So there's that audit trail confirming those decisions. And then the final point is just ensuring that you as a trust are complying with your own financial procedures. So where you've created those procedures, that's kind of our starting point for the audit. We will review you and hold you accountable to those. And quite often we'll go through and find that financial procedure isn't being followed. And that could be because the financial procedures you've set are no longer fit for purpose. You've either grown as a trust or changed as a trust or had a new accounting system that's changed the way you do things, but ensuring that that's kept up to date and that's monitored. So they're the main items that we kind of noticed from last year. So what can you do to limit the amount of management letter points we're going to have? Hopefully none, we'll have a nice clean report. But a few things here, as I said at the beginning, a lot of this you will be doing as standard anyway, so I'm not teaching you to suck eggs. Hopefully this will just be a bit of a refresher. But first of all, just try and opening balances. So one of the first things we'll do as part of the audit is get an opening trial balance for last year's accounts, make sure that any adjustments, late adjustments from last year have been included, just so we're sure we're starting from that opening position. Control accounts is the next one. So for everything that you have a control account, it's everything that sits in that balance sheet. So things like bank reconciliations, and payroll control accounts, VAT, making sure that they've been reviewed at that year-end position compared to what's then in your trial balance. Do they then match up and there's no differences there? An easy review to do is kind of around those main funding streams. I'm talking here sort of the big ticket items, so your GAG income, have what you've got in your trial balance, does it match to what you've got in your GAG funding statement for the year? And is there a reconciliation between those two if they are posted to different codes? But really, if you go through that and just look at those main funding streams, again, when it comes to the audit, it just makes it a lot smoother, knowing that it's in a good position and you haven't got any adjustments to make between those codes. And then the final point, again, ties into that point around that capital funding. So have you got a really good understanding of what capital income you've had during the year, what you've accrued, where you've had a SIF bid that you haven't yet had the money in for, previous year projects where they've been completed, if you've got a closing position, has that money all been spent? Are there any transfers from other funds to top them up? And making sure that you've got a really good understanding of that position. Fixed asset registers, a really big one. I see a large number in the accounts. We've got kind of four, channeling my inner Ed Sheeran here. First of all, just making sure that the fixed asset register agrees to your trial balance for all the different lines where you've got the different categories of assets, you've got the cost and depreciation. There's that link between what's in the register and what's in those trial balance. Reviewing the additions during the year. So doing a review of kind of your revenue codes, repairs and maintenance, IT. Is there anything in there that is capital in nature, meets your capital threshold to be capitalised, making sure that's reflected in the fixed asset register and you've done the relevant journals. Similarly for anything that's been disposed, always a good idea to review that register. If there's anything in there that you're no longer using, let's remove it, keep it nice and tidy. short register if we can, and then put through the irrelevant adjustments to remove that cost and depreciation. And then depreciation, so has that been journaled within? Again, if you're checking that those trial balance figures match your fixed asset register and making sure they've all been put through correctly. Other things to do, key dates. So we'll be setting up planning meetings. Some we've already had, some will be coming in very shortly. But if you've got these key dates, so we can set out a timetable, we want to know what we need to do, when we need to do it. But things like the audit finance committee, where those audit findings are going to be presented and discussed. Then when you've got that full board meeting, then that's going to be physically signed off. So audit planning meetings will be booked in very shortly if they haven't already. But also getting a date in for that completion meeting, so that opportunity after the audit field work just to debrief, go through those audit findings before they are formally presented. And then agreeing the all-important audit field work dates, so when we'll actually be doing that work, and making sure we know when that is. In terms of the statutory accounts themselves, I think for a lot of you, we produce those statutory accounts from your records, but I know there are some that produce their own. So where you do, making sure that you're sort of roll forward those prior year accounts. One of the points that the ESFA fed back, that there were some things that weren't in the accounts last year that were mandatory statements, things like the regularity statement, make that reference to estates management. So making sure that you've gone back and everything that should be in those accounts is in those accounts. Where we prepare the accounts, we'll make sure they're included for you and we'll point them out to you. But what they recommend is going back and looking at that what has changed section for certainly the 23-24 accounts direction, but also the year before, just making sure anything that changed previously has been included. Again, we'll review those accounts, we'll do disclosure checklists, we make sure you're including everything you should. So I don't think it was any of ours that were picked up last year as not having those relevant disclosures in. But again, just to make sure you're in a good place for that 23-24 year. Going concern, had a lot of discussions around this morning with budgets as well, and I know your BFRs, hopefully you're well into those at the moment. 29th of August deadline, as Julia mentioned earlier. But from an audit point of view, we need to see those budget forecast returns. We're going to want to see the assumptions that are underpinning those. We're going to challenge you on those this year, see if they're consistent with what we would expect to see. But also seeing that they have been challenged accordingly by your audit committee, your finance committee, by the board, and ultimately being approved by them. So making sure that your minutes do record all those documents. So on to the deliverables. So the very long list of items that we ask for as part of the audit that we want to have a check. So I'll say we are using inflow again this year. So very much, if you've used it before, make sure that you do have access to it still. Again, with the inflow deliverables, we've got them ready to go. Some I know have already been uploaded. If not, they will be uploaded very soon. So make sure you have got access. The list of what we're asking for is very similar to what we've asked for in previous years. So those are existing to the Parry clients. But in terms of what we're asking for those of you that aren't, it's unlikely to be very different. We all need to look at the same things as auditors. If you look at the deadlines on there, when we need that information, make sure that's achievable, be comfortable with that. If you can't, for whatever reason, reach out as early as you can. And in terms of the format of the information, if there's anything that we're asking for that you're not sure what it is or what we need, then again, please reach out with your relevant teams and agree that. If you've got anything that's ready to go, we make an early start. You can put a deadline on there, but you don't have to wait until that day to upload everything in one go. Please do start early. So there could be things like board minutes that from throughout the year they're asking for, you've already got, payroll reports throughout the year, and you can upload them. So making sure that they're put on early as possible so it's not that last minute rush. And then anything that's kind of third party, so anything that isn't directly provided by you. So we're talking things like the LGPS valuation, make sure that that's been requested, chasing that up if you need that. Land and building valuations, if you have got any converting schools or transferring schools and you're asking for valuations, making sure they're in place. But basically, I guess another one you could call third party, maybe the trustees report. I think it does fall on a lot of the people in the room here to kind of draft that and do the first draft, but if it is somebody else who's writing that, a CEO or someone, then let them know when it's needed by and give them enough notice to make a start on that. So on to inflow. You probably recognise the colours and the images. Some might be quite excited about seeing that again if they've not looked at it for a while. Just might be filled with a sense of dread. Hopefully the former. But just as a very quick kind of refresher, really. So the aim of the inflow game is to get everything from sort of the first column, the draft, all the way through to the complete. So again, everything from red to green. Various sort of charts within there telling you how many you've got in each status, when the due date is. Very quickly see which ones are due imminently and which ones you've got a little bit more time to prepare for. For all of the audits this year, we're going to be using our Collaborate module, which is where we do the actual data transfer with the deliverables. For some this year, we'll be using an ingest module, which is around importing more of the data from your systems. So we can do some sort of AI techniques, which was mentioned earlier. Some analytics on that, looking at kind of how data flows through the systems. We can target the work we're doing. Kind of a new function that we're using, although we did use it last year as well. So just something new for some trusts in the room. This is the kind of main deliverables page. So it's set out in different sections. This one being initial information. It's very small text, don't worry if you can't read it. And then underneath that, the actual deliverables that we need. Tells you the status in terms of the coloured bars. The first initials are who from your CP team will have requested those items, so you know who to reach out to if you've got any questions. The next one is who that's been allocated to within your teams. So if you log into it, you can filter it so you can just see the ones that are relevant to you. You can change those allocations, so you can reallocate them to other members of the team if it's not sat with the right person, or we can also reallocate them. So if you're not sure how to do that, again, just reach out, we can help with that allocation. And then the green is the deadline, so when we need that information by, and as it gets nearer the deadline, that goes from a green to an amber to a red. But we don't want any reds, we want them nice and early. And again, some charts just to show you how that sort of information flows through. And then if you actually click on one of these particular deliverables, you'll then get this screen. So this explains what it is we're asking for at the top. You've got an opportunity to add any comments within there. You can upload any files, and it can be any type of file, it can be Word, Excel, PDF, anything can be drag and dropped in there. And then there's also a bit of a feed, so you can see the history with it. I say hopefully very familiar for a lot of you. And if you've got any questions about anything about inflow, then please do reach out to us, and we can give you a bit of a refresher. The important thing to mention on here is this submit button right at the corner. So it says submit to client on my version, but it will say, I think it just says submit on your version. We can't see any files that you drop in there until you hit that button. So we've had it in the past where you think you've uploaded everything to us and we can't see any information. So make sure you do hit that submit button so it does come through to our side. So in terms of what you can expect from us, so the first bit for the year end is that audit planning meeting. So a lot of them are already booked in, and if not, they will be getting booked in very soon. But an opportunity to hear all about what's happened at the trust during the year. We can tell you about sort of the specifics of the audit, agree that timetable, agree those dates, making sure that we're all pulling in the same direction to get everything completed. From that, we'll then issue our audit planning report. So a very colourful document that's to the audit committee, to the board, sets out the key risk areas where we're going to focus our audit work, sets out the audit approach, how we're going to go about doing our work, the timetable that's been agreed, and also the senior members of your audit team and contact details. So any of you as a finance team, anybody, any of the committee, any of the board, they can reach out and contact anybody if they've got any issues or concerns during the audit. The audit deliverables, say, will be going live very soon. I know some people like to work on them over that summer period when it's potentially a little bit quieter if you're working, rather than saving for that September rush. So we'll make sure they're issued soon. And then in terms of templates, within Inflow, there are certain areas where we've provided templates for you. So things like some of the payroll disclosures, particularly the AAR, sort of the later end of the audit. If you want to use our templates, please do feel free. I know a lot of you do produce that information in your own formats already, and we're fine with that. We're happy to work with that. But just if you need sort of a starting point of how to populate that information, they are there. And also the trustees report guidance that I mentioned as well earlier. We produce our own guide that takes the SFA's kind of model accounts, then adds some sort of more guidance around that, what you can include, what you should be thinking about. If you have any questions during the whole process, this always stands throughout the year as well, reach out to us, talk to us. Audit planning meetings is a great opportunity to ask any questions that you've got about that audit process. You can ring us, email us, hop in for a drink, anything. We'd like to hear from you. If there are anything that you're unsure about on accounting treatment, your opening balances don't agree when you go and review those, then again, reach out to the team before we get to that audit fieldwork stage, just so we can make sure we're all in a really good place to start that audit. And then there's no silly questions. We'd much rather you reached out and asked a question now that we can resolve. If it is a silly question, we won't laugh, we'll just help you resolve it very quickly. And just making sure that we're all in a really good place, we have a really smooth audit process and everybody's prepared. And that was it from me. So, yeah, thank you very much. And